Hello and welcome to today's PIR live event webinar brought to you by Partners in Research Canada. My name is Stacey Joyce and I will be your host. If you're joining us live, please remember that you can ask questions anytime by clicking the chat button in the top left corner of your screen. Two things to do when you are sending in a question. Please make sure you change the to field so that it includes attendees. That way the other students can see what questions are being asked, as well as telling us where the question's coming from. Sometimes that might be a student first name, or you can let us know your city or the teacher's name, grade level, any or all of the above, and we'd be happy to give you a shout out when we ask your question. So today's webinar guests, we have two guests with us. First, we have Jessie McAlpine, who is a first-year master's student in the Department of Molecular Genetics at the University of Toronto. Thanks for joining us, Jessie.
I'm happy to be here.
And we also have Laura Nersessian, who is a third-year Bachelor of Arts and Science student focusing on food security at the University of Guelph. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Laura, who's going to speak to you for a little while. Thanks so much, Laura.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. And then I'm excited to share with you some of the things I have learned in the past 3 years at the University of Guelph. Starting at the beginning, back in grade 12, I wanted to go into nutrition, but I didn't make it into my top university choice. Although I did make it into two programs, one of which was the Arts and Science program at the University of Guelph. This program isn't offered at all universities in Canada, but it's still pretty cool because it allows you to graduate with an honors bachelor's degree and two minors, one in arts and the other in science. The pathway that I decided to go down, as Stacey mentioned, was a minor in nutrition and nutraceutical sciences and a minor in family and childhood development. One thing that is amazing about this program is that it brings together so many different fields and explains why global issues can only be solved through many different perspectives. If you're interested in enrolling in a major that allows you the freedom to do the things you love to do, I would highly recommend an arts and science major. And so currently, I volunteer for an awesome food security initiative that is known as Feeding 9 Billion. And our team recognizes that the human population count is only increasing, and by the year 2050, we will have about 9 billion people occupying the earth. And so our goal is to help bring education to reduce food waste and create programs that help provide everyone food access. And so when each of you find an opportunity to volunteer for something you feel passionate about, I would say take the chance and go for it. And if you ever have the chance to come to the University of Guelph, we have an awesome student volunteer connection service where you can walk into a building, tell another person what you love to do, and they will find a place where you can apply your passion. And so instead of focusing a lot on what I'm currently doing in third year, I would like to speak a little bit about transitions and changes, and more specifically the transition from high school to university. I feel like everyone experiences different fears or concerns from time to time when big changes occur and when everything seems so uncertain. So I'd like to share with you all the balance I have created for myself and that I have gotten to know very well over the past 3 years. And so I like to call this the fine balance between networks. And for those of you who don't know, a network is where people come together or connections between people. And so the three networks I'm going to focus on is the social network, the academic network, and the health network. And so this is a story starting in first year on how I found those three networks. Back in first year, I was living away from home in what universities call a residence. I didn't have many friends from high school attend the University of Guelph. And I was excited to meet new people, but I also wanted to fit in. The people living near me really enjoyed having a good time. So that meant we went to a lot of social events and we didn't get much studying done. I spent a lot of time with them and found myself focusing less on work and more on those social events, which often resulted in less sleep, bad eating habits, and lower self-esteem. Once I saw my grades falling after midterms came around, I realized that I enjoyed spending time with my floor mates, but I also enjoyed learning and needed to find a middle ground. So as you can see, I had found that social network, but now I was looking for the academic network. So I decided to reach out to my peers within my classes. I would start speaking to people who raised their hand in class and really seemed interested in the topics being discussed. Having found this new group of friends, it allowed me to focus on school and feel excited about it at the same time. I also attended what our university likes to call a supported learning group. And this was for my chemistry class, my first year chemistry class. It's a place where you can go when you're having trouble understanding a specific class and getting free help from someone who would consider themselves an expert on the topic. Lastly, since I had found this new academic network, and I spent a lot of time with them, I found that when I'd go back to residence, my roommates would still be waiting there for me and would love to chat for hours. So sometimes we'd stay up till 3 a.m. talking about what was going on at school. But even though I had now found the social network and the academic network, I realized I still had a lot of lack of sleep, less exercise, and my eating habits were still pretty bad. And this was all catching up to me. I began feeling overwhelmed, sad, and nervous all the time. There was so much to get done, and it just felt like everything was piling up. I knew that something had to change because my mental and physical health was now greatly being affected by my worries and stress. I found another great resource at the university, which is what we call counseling services. And I started going once a week to speak with a professional counselor, which is for free, in a safe space where I could speak about whatever I wanted to. I was provided help on creating a new schedule so that I could cut down the time I spent staying up at night and spend more time sleeping so I would feel less drained. And so this is how I found my balance. First year was by no means a breeze. For some people, it is very easy to grab concepts and understand things in class. Although I had never been, nor will I ever be that person. I have accepted it, and I have found the joy in my process of learning at my own pace. And so what I hope that you will all take away from this is that, and that you will apply in your own life, is balance. Create a schedule for yourself so that you can maintain a balance and never feel overwhelmed in any of these 3 networks. For everyone, this will look different because some people may be faster learners. So take the time to do your homework, take the time to spend with your family and friends, and take the time to get to know yourself and check in with yourself. The last thing I want to say is study what you enjoy. And sometimes that can change and you can change it too. Learn at your own pace and you don't have to finish your undergrad in 4 years. I know a lot of people who are finishing theirs in 5 or 6 years. And as for myself, I will be finishing mine in 5 years in order to maintain that balance and feel healthy. There are no timelines. You might feel that sometimes, but it is your life and you will be the happiest when you do things at your own pace. So thank you for listening. I hope that what I have said provided you all a better understanding of what you might experience in college or university. You may never experience the struggle, but if you do, I urge you to reach out to the resources and never feel ashamed. Do what you need to do to become the best version of yourself. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jessie.
All right, thanks, Laura, for sharing all of that. Yeah, I'm going to switch a little bit in terms of what I'm going to talk about. I obviously went through first year as well back in the day, but as I'm currently a grad student at the University of Toronto, I thought I would talk a little bit about getting involved in research in undergrad and then also potentially in grad school, since we are part of Partners in Research, and hopefully you guys are interested in science and getting involved in research as well. But just as a little background on me, I'm from Woodstock, Ontario. So when I was applying to universities in high school, I applied to 3 different schools in Ontario and then to the University of British Columbia. And I ended up going to the University of Toronto for undergrad. So I really branched out for grad school. And I really enjoyed my time at U of T, and I can also answer questions based on my undergrad experience. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about my background in research and how I was able to continue that throughout undergrad and now into my grad school education. So I'm just going to share some slides with you guys. Just with some visuals, because I find it's always easier to, here we go. So I actually got involved with Partners in Research as part of the Science Fair program, which is national throughout Canada. And there's many different ways to get involved with Science Fair. And I urge you guys, if you are interested in science or in research at all, the Science Fair program is a great way to kind of get your toes wet and start to experience research right from the high school level. And I can definitely answer questions on that if anyone is interested. But currently, as a first-year grad student, I'm in the Cowan Lab at the University of Toronto, where we look at fungal infections. So essentially what we try to develop are better drugs to treat systemic fungal disease, which is one of the leading causes of death in individuals who are immunocompromised. So I really like eukaryotic parasites, and I really enjoy this work. And if anyone has questions on genetics, feel free to ask me. But what I wanted, I'll just skip this. What I wanted to talk about is how you guys could potentially get involved with research from the high school level or also in undergraduate. There's tons of different opportunities that vary between schools, but there are several programs that you would find are similar between the different universities depending on where you want to go. In terms of high school, I mentioned before the Science Fair program, which is quite diverse in terms of the opportunities it offers. In particular with Partners in Research, we organized the Sanofi BioGenius Challenge, which is a biotechnology competition for high school students throughout the country. And essentially what the program does is, if you are interested in conducting research, you can submit a small proposal in the fall based on an idea that you would be interested in looking into. And then the program helps connect you with a mentor, a researcher who's in that field, and can provide support in order for you to help develop a science fair project, which you then present at a regional competition, which there are several throughout the country. I believe there are 14 different regions, which are all on the Sanofi BioGenius website. But I know probably a lot of you are sitting there and saying, I really like science. I think that research could be cool, but it can be very daunting to try to figure out how to get involved in research because it can seem so big all at once. But I think one of the best things to do is to try to see where your interests lie within science. So I know for me, I read a lot of like secondary science publications, so things like National Geographic or Scientific American or other science media outlets. And from there, it kind of helped me realize I was really interested in biology and in specifically in genetics and parasite biology. But you don't, obviously, you're all very young. You don't need to know exactly what you want to study yet, but it might be a good idea to kind of wrap your head around what gets you motivated, what interests you within science. And then from there, programs like the Sanofi BioGenius Challenge can help you connect with researchers in that field. Even if you don't necessarily want to start doing research right away, I find that a lot of professors are really, really keen to talk to students who are interested in their work. So if there's a researcher who you're interested in their work, it's honestly a very easy thing to send them an email and just say, hey, I'm really interested in the work that you do. I'd love to come, see the lab or speak to you a little bit more about your work. And it can seem daunting, but actually most professors are really, really keen to share their work because we all love science. So we just like to talk about it. But I guess obviously it depends on geography in terms of proximity to some of these researchers, but also you can form an e-connection, I guess, if you're interested just in communicating over email with someone who's in a field that you're interested in. Or if there's a school that you've either gotten into or are hoping to apply to for undergraduate, it might be useful to try to make those connections at a school you're hoping to attend. But if you don't want to even start thinking about research until undergrad, most schools have really accessible research programs for undergraduate students. Most schools have this sort of formal fourth-year thesis which becomes the honors part of your degree, where you'll do a full year of independent research in one of the labs at the university. But also a lot of universities now offer research-based courses. So they might be like a lab course, or one where, as per your credit, you get linked with a lab, and in that lab you will do research. At the University of Toronto, we have a lot of very specific, unique research opportunities. So if anyone is interested in that, definitely ask a question, or at the end of my little spiel here, I will put my email, and absolutely anyone who is interested in research of any kind, or the University of Toronto. I was a tour guide, so I know all the facts. I can definitely help you out. But please feel free to contact me, because a lot of the times you might be interested in research but don't know exactly where to start. And there basically is never a better time to start getting interested in research, especially if science is something that you think is really interesting and something you might want to pursue as a career. So just as an example of some of the more research-based programs available to high school students within Canada, you can see in the center here we have the Sanofi BioGenius Challenge, which is what we organize through Partners in Research. There's also other organizations such as Youth Science Canada, which organize the Canada-wide science fair each year, and the regional science fairs that take place across the country. There's also the Shad Valley program, which will, if you apply to the program, you apply to a campus, and they take place at most of the major universities throughout Canada, and you go there for, I think it's 4 weeks, and you do project-based learning in a STEM discipline. So if you're interested in biology and you want to see, I don't know, the University of Toronto campus or University of Guelph campus, or any of the other universities, you can apply to SHAD to do this summer program. And it's a great way to get initially involved in research without having to directly contact a lab yourself. And then there's also the Students on Ice program, which sends students to both the Canadian Arctic and Antarctica on research vessels. And then Science Expo, which helps connect students with all kinds of organizations, which are not listed here, but the list goes on and on. So with that, I guess my email is on this slide here. So anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about some of the programs I talked about, or just wants to know a little bit more about what it's like to be a grad student, to do research as a career, please send me an email. I love questions, because questions are the foundation of science. So please contact me. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your questions.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for sharing your experience. It sounds like you've had slightly different experiences, but there were some common themes there that I was really happy to hear, because I think a lot of times it's really intimidating to try and figure out what you want to do when you're in high school and where do you apply and that sort of thing. And the idea that, Jesse, it seems like in your experience, you had a pretty clear view of what you wanted to be doing, and you had tried some research in high school and had a direction, and you were able to make some network connections to make that happen. And Laura, I just loved that your initial plan was not how things are working out for you, and that you found something that you love, because I hear that story time and time again from even people who've gone into research and done PhDs and are now professors. They always seem to have this slightly zigzagging path. And the supports that both of you mentioned that are available are really wonderful too. So the first question I have is for Laura. And what is it like? You're in undergrad, you're learning specific classes at different times, and then you're doing this work with Feeding 9 Billion, and the idea of such a multidisciplinary problem and trying to work on that. What's that like, to take the things you're learning and apply them kind of all at once?
I think it's pretty cool. Right now I work with 2 other guys. One of them is a first year in chemistry, and the other one is a 4th year in international development. And as for myself, I'm in arts and science. So as we're working on projects together, trying to come up with different events to kind of create this outreach within our own Guelph community, not only on campus, we kind of take all our different perspectives and work together. So for me, sometimes I find it difficult because my background's just nutrition. So I'm thinking about how do we feed these people, but how do we feed them with enough nutrients? Whereas my peers are thinking about how do we bring technology into this from the chemistry side. And then my other peer from IDEV is thinking internationally, how do we think about all these cultures and how do we provide food for people who may eat differently than, let's say, we do in Western culture. So I think it's kind of cool. I think that I do like my program for the reason that I get to meet different people. And when we have our core arts and science classes, we have to take one every year. We meet people from different minors. So a lot of my friends enjoy taking psychology and neuroscience. I know someone right now who's in music and geography. So there's a lot of different things happening.
Right. And Jessie, how did you choose which university to attend?
Yeah, great question. Also, I did want to mention that even though I had a path in mind in terms of research, my actual classes and grades definitely were not as expected throughout my undergraduate career. But essentially, I chose U of T for the research opportunities that it offered. I was debating between the University of British Columbia, the University of Ottawa, Queen's, and Toronto. And ultimately, I chose the University of Toronto because they have, or U of T offers opportunities to do full year research credits from second year. So essentially, you can do a fourth year thesis, but during each of your second, third, and fourth years. And I really liked the idea that the research I was hoping to do anyways would go towards credits for my degree. And it opened up what would have been the class time for that in order to spend more time in the lab. And that was something I really wanted to do. And I also found U of T is a very research intensive environment, and a lot of the classes are based on primary research and research that goes on at the university. And that was something that I really wanted out of my undergraduate experience. But that's obviously not for everyone. So that's why I chose U of T. But.
Right. And that's very interesting because it plays back into the talk about balancing your time for what you want to accomplish. That you wanted to do the research, so you had to find a way to make that count towards your degree in terms of course load. And how do you feel about being at a large university in terms of U of T is a very big university, just what goes on compared to maybe a smaller campus? How do you like that?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the drawbacks for me personally of U of T. I wanted the feel of a small university, but ultimately chose U of T for the research resources it offered. U of T tries to get around the fact that it's such a big school by having the college system. So if anyone is currently or going to apply to U of T, the undergraduate program is split up into 7 colleges for everyone in arts and sciences. And then there's a separate quote unquote college system for the different faculties. So engineering, music, architecture, there are others. But so within arts and science, we're split between these 7 colleges. So I belong to University College, which split up our 40,000 undergraduates to about, I think we had 6,000 or 4,000. So it became smaller, but essentially you belong to the community of University College instead of always associating with the broader community of the University of Toronto. But usually people describe the undergraduate experience at U of T as kind of finding your niche. So people kind of develop their own sense of community around the niches they belong to. So I found my niche within my lab and my research community and my college. Other people find it through different clubs or sports or their own colleges. But yeah, I think it's definitely not for everyone. And that's why I think one of the best recommendations I can give is to really tour, if possible, the campuses that you are considering, because that will help give you the best idea of the size, the community feel, what the university has to offer, and how it makes you feel, because you'll be spending a lot of time there for 4 years. So it's important to consider more than just the academic side of things.
Right. And what about you, Laura? You're at more of a medium-sized university at Guelph. How do you feel about that?
So my sister actually came here before I did, and I knew a lot about the University of Guelph through her. And so when I come up to visit her, I really like the feel of the campus, because you could probably walk across campus within 10 minutes. I think our university right now, we have about 25,000 students. So we're not as big as U of T. But I do like the smaller feel of things. I feel that anytime I go into a building, I can find someone I know around there. And I do like that idea of interacting with people I know very often. And another thing that you guys, if you ever want to go to the University of Guelph, might like, we're very big on agriculture as well as environmental sciences. So we got a lot of outdoors things going on, a lot of activities with the Aggies on campus as well.
Right. And what about the courses? I mean, we've talked a bit about sort of life and what that looks like as a whole. In case any of our audience members are wondering about sort of academic expectations, Laura, how did you feel about transitioning from high school and what was expected of you to going to your full-time course load in first year, and what the expectations were for your courses?
So back in high school, I was taking, I think, most of the grade 12 science courses that you had to take in order to get into a science undergrad. And that was before I decided to take arts and science. Even though I was not fully in a science program, I found that I still had to take the majority of first year courses that a lot of science undergrads did. And I would see a lot of reoccurring themes from grade 12. So especially in our chemistry, our 2 first year chemistry courses, there were a lot of things that we learned in grade 12 that showed up there. But one thing that I underestimated was that every time I saw something I knew about, I wouldn't go home and study it, because I thought, oh, I remember this from grade 12. And by the time the midterm comes around, they really expect you to apply what you know. So if you don't really know what's going on in the background of some of those science courses, you won't be able to apply that to those big integrative questions that they ask you. They really want you to think during midterms and exams.
Right. And what about you, Jessie? Through transition, if you can remember back a couple extra years to first year, and then maybe as you've gone through the different years of undergrad and now into your first year of your master's, how have the expectations academically changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I found at U of T, their life science, you take kind of a general first year in life sciences, and the classes are quite large because there are a lot of students who are invested in those programs. And so I found very quickly that you had to be like the captain of your own ship, because in a biology class of 2,000 students, the prof will not notice if you don't come. But that doesn't mean they don't want to help you. And I think that that was one misconception I didn't realize, because since the classes were big, it was easy to assume that the profs, didn't care. But I did not find that was the case. If you took the time to go to the office hours and bring your questions and talk to them, they were more than happy to sit down and explain concepts and things. But it was kind of getting that initial, I don't know if courage is the word, but I guess like the initial initiative, I guess, to go actually talk to the prof about things that you were worried about. But I did find that the expectations increased for sure, especially in terms of timeline, because your semesters are shorter. So you're packing a lot more information into a smaller amount of time. And a lot of the courses obviously require a lot of work. So I had to very quickly adjust how my time management was organized. And then as I progressed through undergrad, I found that the time management became more second nature, but the courses became more difficult. So I found the same thing as Laura, in that in first year, a lot of the material was review of high school courses, but then as you advance, you start learning new things and you have to really keep on top of it. Otherwise, you won't kind of build on those concepts. And then in grad school, it's even more different because you don't really have assignments anymore. and you don't really have classes either. Essentially, as you can tell, I'm in the lab right now, and I almost live here. I spend 12 hours a day here, 7 days a week, which is not a requirement, but essentially in grad school, again, it's even more independent. So you have to make sure that you're getting your experiments done, that your cells aren't dying, that you're coming in to passage things and make sure that everything is running smoothly. And so I'll be in the lab for a large amount of time, but that doesn't mean I'm studying the whole time. And so it becomes very different because I'm not like working on assignments or writing tests. Instead, I'm reading papers and thinking about my experiments and analyzing data and trying to figure out what's happening because you're doing things that have never been done before, which I really enjoy, but it is quite different because you have sort of these 6-month stretches between committee meetings where you're just left to get things done and then show your progress. So you really have to stay on top of things. Otherwise, it's easy to kind of let things slide.
And it must be nice. You're surrounded by other people in the lab who are doing the same sort of thing. So it seems to me that your graduate education is almost like you're working in a lab.
Oh yeah, it is 100%. You also get paid, kind of.
Kind of,
below
yes.
the poverty line.
Well, I think we're running out of time here. So what I'd like to do is give you each one more opportunity. If you can think of something off the top of your head that if you could go back in time and tell yourself when you were a high school student, something you've learned along the way that would have been really great to know ahead of time, what might one of those things be? And maybe let's start with Jessie.
Okay. So I think I heard this a lot in high school, but it never actually sunk in for me. And I wish that I could go back and tell myself to actually believe all of the people that I heard this from. But essentially, it's that grades do not matter as much as people think that they do. And that becomes especially true in undergrad, where when you convocate, you will still have an undergraduate degree either way. And for me, I found that a lot of my learning occurred outside of the classroom. And so I wish that I could tell my high school self to look forward to and find value in those outside of the classroom activities just as much as I do with my in-class learning.
Right. Well, thank you. What about you, Laura? What would you like your years ago self to have known?
I think I'm going to go off of Jessie about that. I used to keep my head in a book a lot in high school. I studied a lot in high school. And then, like I said, when I came to university, I really felt like I needed to fit in. So then I tried to do that whole social aspect. Over the last 3 years, I think I've learned a lot more about people in university than I have itself about my own academics. And I think that's a really great thing. You're learning how to talk to people, how to work with people. Group projects are one of my favorite things. I honestly don't know why a lot of people don't like them, but I think it's an amazing thing when you get together with a bunch of people in a room and you're bouncing off these ideas from other people. And I would really encourage you that when you guys get to college or university or wherever you go after high school, to honestly just meet someone on the side of the road, talk to them. I think you can get an opportunity to learn something from everyone you meet, no matter what.
Well, thank you. I think that is wonderful advice. We really appreciate that both of you have taken the time to share your experiences and the knowledge you've gained along the way and answer our questions today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you enjoyed this webinar, as I hope you did, we do have other webinars planned, and you can find more information on recordings of previous webinars and upcoming webinars at www.pirweb.org. And there's information there as well about the other programs that are available from Partners in Research Canada. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.